All right, what is up, YouTube or K-Rod fans? It's Kieran here to talk more about boxing for the YouTube. All right, so let's get right into it. I'm going to make a couple of videos to share my thoughts on the boxing world, and for the first topic, I wanted to cover, the first topic. I'm going to talk about Canelo Alvarez. Why Canelo Alvarez is the biggest a ducker in boxing, or basically he's pretty much like the crappiest boxer in boxing. And I'm going to explain why he has the worst legacy for his brand. So, Saul Canelo Alvarez is from Mexico. He's been fighting since he was 15 years old, I believe, as a pro, which is really weird because if you've been fighting for 15 years as a pro, you ought to think that you'd be fighting high-level competition at that point. But no, supposedly Canelo Alvarez, he gets the exception because he's a like he's such a high level tier fighter. He can't seem to be fighting guys at his level. He needs to fight guys that are under him, so he can just get easy wins. But I just find it absolutely disrespectful of how Canelo Alvarez does not have any, I guess like like he doesn't have like a sense of urgency to make sure his career is saved. And I think honestly, it's due to the fact that Floyd Mayweather gave him the work in his very first fight with Floyd back in 2013 or 2014. I forgot what year that was. And I was actually mad young back then. I was like 18 or at least 17 back in high school. But I just find it so weird because Canelo claims to say that he's such a good fighter. But when we take a look at all the things that he's done, he hasn't done shit. And for all you Canelo haters, let me ask you something. What fighters has Canelo really fought? Honestly, he hasn't really fought anyone because he's been acting like such a pussy to not fight any high-level competition. And, before you even try to make any excuse to say, nah, man, Canelo, he fought guys like Gennady Golovkin, Miguel Cotto, Danny Jacobs, blah, 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 who's that other fucking fighter? James Kirkland, right? Well, I mean, Kirkland, he's okay, but he's not a high-tier fighter. You could see like the trend with Canelo, and I could pick 5 fights from his whole career that are not even that good. Like literally the shittiest fights I've ever seen from Canelo. The very first one is a Julio Cesar Chavez fight. That fight was an absolute nightmare, as both fighters didn't even go that hard. Like they just fought absolutely crappy. Canelo, he wasn't even going in on Julio. It just felt like a pussy fight. You know what I'm saying? I'm not even like kidding you. Like Canelo, he doesn't even have that caliber where you could say, "Wow, you know what? I actually want to go see him fight again." He doesn't really seem to really care, and I think it's because that with all the money that he's been promised by DAZN to basically stay with them for at least like 10 fights, which is equivalent to at least I think 3 to 5 years, but I don't think that's ever going to happen due to DAZN literally going bankrupt, and they're probably not going to be in business for quite a while because they're losing money. Even though Canelo, he's guaranteed at least 33 million a fight, but that shit don't mean anything. Just because you granted or you're guaranteed 33 million does not mean that you're going to be getting that 33 million. And I just think, like, at this point, he's pretty much screwing himself because Canelo, he doesn't have, any high level competition that he's ever really faced. He's never faced Jamal Charlo. He's never faced guys like David Benavidez, which he said, "Oh, I would never fight like my own Mexican people," but yet you fought guys like Alfredo Angulo, and I forgot that other guy, the other Mexican that he fought, but like, you're fighting people that are past their primes, and I just think, like, you know, I'm not even Mexican like myself, but I come from like a Puerto Rican family. Well, I'm black and Puerto Rican, like, as some of y'all know me, but it's like, dude, Puerto Ricans have more balls to even fight their own people as professional boxers because they're trying to prove themselves and show how good of like a fighter they are. And it's not just because, like, oh, that's part of like Puerto Rican tradition or something. It's just because that Puerto Ricans actually have such a heart to actually fight, and they actually put their all into the ring to fight the best. But that argument can be made with Mexicans, but I don't think Mexicans have really shown themselves over the past couple years to actually be serious about what they want to do. And when they claim to say that they're such great fighters, they're really not, because Canelo, he's not making his people look good. Like, I can assure you that Canelo, he's just going to do the same old thing to just be cherry picking fights that he knows that he can win, and he'll never fight anybody at the level of a Jamal Charlo or whatever fighter that's willing to give him the smoke. Every time when he was told to fight his mandatories, he always found a way to get out of those fights, and then he basically bitches out, and he doesn't do anything about it. Like, why does Canelo have to be so afraid fighting these guys when he claims to say he is pound for pound? He claims to say that he is the most technical fighter in boxing. But when the eyes are being told by the fans to say, "Hey, here's these really good fighters. How about you go fight them and show how good Mexican fighters are?" And then guess what? When the opportunity was given for Canelo, for him to fight his mandatories or fight his toughest comp, guess what he did? He bitched out. Like, Canelo fans are like Barbie dolls mixed with just He-Man action figures. That's really what they are. They act so tough and mighty until they see the truth of what Canelo is not about, and then they just act like pussies. And they don't like to hear the truth that Canelo is by far the biggest fraud in boxing right now, where he is not gonna go after fucking Jamal Charlo or guys like Demetrius Andrade or guys like, I don't know, but do you, like, honestly, if you don't see this trend of what's going on right now, then you don't know boxing. You don't understand that boxing is such a pathetic sport where people have to basically convince the fighter that they like, that chooses not to fight the best comp, to be hounded by the fans to say, "Hey, you better fight this guy or else we're not going to support you." And I mean, it's good that the market in some way regulates itself to a degree, even though that, it's a state control market that, you know, that what the current worldview of economics is in, with, with the state interfering with, every single market not being an actual free market. But when you have these boxing commissioning firms that are in control of these fighters, of who they're supposed to fight and who they're not supposed to fight, there's no true regulation in the market to say, hey, This champion is supposed to fight these guys in order for him or her to keep their belt. And if they do not fight these guys, they should be penalized, or to some degree, they should have to fight their mandatories and their, toughest competition in order for them to keep their belt. Or else, you will be stripped of your title. You will lose, your promoters and sponsors. That's up to them voluntarily, and you have to get back your reputation in order to, be considered valuable for more future fights. And I think that's what boxing needs. Like, boxing needs a market revolution where, the best fights the best. And I mean, I like how promoters like Al Heyman, where he comes out of his way and he gets guys, and sometimes females, which female boxing is not as popular as men, but but still, Al Heyman still makes good fights where you get to see the best prospects going up against each other, and even champions. And I think honestly, um, the rules for boxing need to be but the rules for boxing need to be modified more, where the fighters that are champions need to fight their mandatories, and if they don't, they should be penalized. And then on top of that, they like anybody that is a contender should fight other contenders in the top 10, so that way they can, maintain their contender stock, right? To be considered, I guess, a possible mandatory challenger for a world title defense, or a world title challenge, right? So I think those would be good changes for the boxing world. And I think when you do take a look at how boxers are being screwed over now, it definitely needs to be fixed, because fighters that are trying to get their name up in boxing don't have a lot of competition. And when you see the higher level fighters that are coming up into the ranks, um, quote unquote, don't get enough good fights on their record, it makes their credibility go down. Where fighters that are on that, I guess, like, how should I say it? Some people try to bring, racial, politics into it, to say like fighters that are on the coincidental, they have to work twice as hard in order to get to where they need to be, but fighters that don't, they can easily get put into a title fight within 3 fights or 2 fights, and then boom, there they go. And I don't really agree with that. I think it's more like, okay, if you have the political connections within the boxing business, then yeah, you will have, your coincidentals and people that are on the Great White Hope list, like, which I can agree, there are political tensions when it comes to people sponsoring fighters for the sake of setting up that person to become like a pseudo Rocky Balboa that does it the cheating way, i.e. Tyson Fury. But you can kind of see that when it comes down to that point, these people don't need to do that much in order to get up through the rankings. But fighters that do have to go through a lot of hoops and loops to get up through the rankings always get put down. They always have to deal with the media trying to shun them. And there's so much competition where, you don't even know if, like, the fighter that you're fighting is going to be playing safe. Which, I mean, most boxers do cheat, and that definitely needs to be taken out of boxing, where boxers can have a fair fight, and there can be some really good matches where people don't have to die in the ring. And I just think, like, that's really the biggest fault in boxing. A lot of people just don't seem to care, or they just don't have the time to kind of look at these things and say, hey, this is such a big issue for the sport of boxing, and it kind of does need to get changed. You know, it seems like that a lot of boxers are cheating for the sake of, you know, I guess like, advancing their careers. And I think that really does need to be stopped. As much as people don't want that to be stopped, boxing is not about killing people, according to Keith Thurman. And I think for a boxer like him to come out and say that, that should definitely be acknowledged more because, I do want to see guys like Miguel Cruz become a world champion and not have to have his life being put onto the line all the time for the sake of, okay, some fighter wants to cheat and try to knock a guy out as quickly as possible, or female, vice versa, and just make things harder for people to, survive in the ring. And the referees need to definitely be well trained, along with judges. I think judges should be, they need to have like some boxing experience, which I don't know, that does seem a little bit too risky because there are plenty of corrupt judges in boxing, and there needs to be more oversight for what the fight is. I would say I would probably maybe add in two more judges, or like have at least six judges, and that would definitely be a lot better than having like three judges, because having three judges is like not enough coverage, and I would probably say that could make a fight better. Let me know if that's a good idea. Or you could probably leave it to maybe how many punches are landed, and whoever lands more punches when it comes to a decision more wins the fight. But I mean, decisions are actually more consistent, but it needs to be reviewed by really, really, really well-rounded judges, like people that have boxing, knowledge of the sport, and they actually look at what they can determine a good round for a fighter. But it should be determined based on the stats of that fighter's performance within the round, and then that could be, the end result of a fighter's, how should I say, a fighter's, progression to either win or lose a fight. But back to Canelo. Here's my advice for Canelo and the Canelo fans. If you want Canelo Alvarez to save his career, he needs to make the move now, not fight this crappy piece of shit fighter named Avni Yildirim, which he fought Anthony Durrell and got his ass beat or pummeled, which Durrell, even though that he almost lost by TKO by him, but still, a loss is a loss. It's not really a good look for Canelo. I think Canelo needs to, grow up. I mean, he's 30 years old, so I mean, you have 15 years of boxing experience, so you should be good enough to fight anybody at the level of what you want to fight. And Canelo, will be good, because everybody out of Canelo's fanboy base, are trying to like religiously protect Canelo, to say like, okay, well, he's not really, at any need to fight anybody good because nobody has really given him a good offer yet. Which is bullshit, because I mean, Canelo, he's getting paid $365 million for, I think, 5 or 10 fights, right? With the deal that he had with DAZN, so he's already packing $33 million a fight in order to keep his career going. But it's like, it's not like Canelo has anything to lose, because he's already lost to Floyd Mayweather. And I think psychologically, he is defeated by Floyd's performance. he knows that Floyd beat him pretty bad, and he just treated him like, like a little child, where, he couldn't be messing with Floyd. Floyd gave him the university of playing defense rather than going in offense. And that's really what the nature of boxing. It's a sport to, defend yourself and hit and not get hit. But I think what Canelo needs to do is that he needs to go to those fundamentals and fight the best. You need to fight Demetrius Andrade. You need to fight Billy Joe Saunders, which, I mean, Billy Joe Saunders is a crappy opponent. I don't think he would even last at least 6 rounds with Canelo. But Billy Joel is terrible. Fight people like David Benavidez. Fight Caleb Plant. Fight Demetrius Andrade. Fight who's that other fighter? Jamal Charlo. Or even Jermell Charlo. I don't know. Like, I don't even know like what Canelo's what Canelo's weight division is. I think he's at light heavyweight, but I think he's at middleweight. Middleweight, sorry. Or no, super middleweight. Yeah, super middleweight at 168, if I'm not mistaken. But still, it's like Canelo. You have so many options to choose from other than this crappy low tier champion that low tier fighter that he even requested through the WBC, Avni Yildirim. But it's just like Canelo is ruining his career. Oscar De La Hoya is pissed off. The whole country of Mexico is pissed off. I mean, a crap load of Mexican fighters are actually flaming Canelo for the stupid antics that he's doing, or cherry picking, if you will. And he's losing his credibility, and that's good because he needs to lose everything that he claims to say that he's doing, and he needs to learn the lesson of being responsible and being a prideful fighter, because I really do believe Canelo has a good future to redeem himself, or he will go down as one of the biggest frauds in boxing, and he'll just be basically washed up garbage. That's really where it's going to with Canelo. So I don't know how else to really say it in a nicer way, but Canelo needs to redeem himself with bigger top tier fights. Get Andrade, get Charlo, get all these guys that have been calling you out for years, and on top of that, you have never even came out to respond to them. You kept avoiding them, and they've always wanted to come after you, but it seems like you just don't want the smoke because you're psychologically broken from what Floyd did to you. Honestly, let's just be honest, bro. But honestly, you Canelo fans that keep, religiously defending him as if he's still relevant in boxing. He won't be relevant when he keeps cherry picking so many fighters where one day the wrong fighter will be chosen. Like, maybe Edgar Berlanga or who else? I don't know, but there is a strong possibility where those fighters could come up and actually beat the crap out of Canelo. And I think within at least a year's time or less, he will get beat. He will get beat again. He's just trying to long last his winning streak until someone actually comes up to him and knocks him out. So that's pretty much my beef with Canelo. I don't really hate him, but I'm very disappointed in his lack of competition he's chosen to fight him. And in order for him to save his own career, he needs to really step it up and start calling out big names. Because I know Canelo, he could fight those people, but he chooses not to because he knows that even without the people that he's cherry picked himself, where he doesn't even fight properly, he just fights so nonchalant and so laid back as if it's just a sparring session. He's losing. Yeah, he's losing more experience than gaining. Yeah, than gaining from it. So that's really my thoughts on everything on Canelo. Let me know what y'all think. Be sure to like, rate, comment, subscribe, and I will see y'all later. And have a good day. Bye.